Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our DynaCrop webinar series, to our fourth part, which is taking into consideration orchards and vineyards. Thank you for your votes in the initial poll. I will end it now and share the results with you. We were asking you which use cases of space-based data are most interesting for you, and the winner is variable rate fertilizing and yield predictions. So those are the two things that you are mostly interested now, and we can go directly into the webinar. So welcome to the last piece of our Precision Agriculture with Space Data, Insights and Opportunities webinar series, which is organized by DynaCrop. We've already had 3 webinars previously, one overall on precision agriculture trends for this year. We had one deep dive into the field crops and one into the soil monitoring. And today we are looking at orchards and vineyards. If you by any chance missed the previous ones, you will find them on our YouTube channel, as well as the previous webinar series we did last year on regenerative agriculture. So if you like this topic, the carbon in the soil, fertility, and all the business models that can be built on this, feel free to check our last year's webinars. At the beginning, shortly about our company. World from Space is a 5-year-old company from the Czech Republic. We're focused on analyzing satellite data for agriculture and food value chain. We've got a track record working on projects with the European Space Agency and EUSPA, also with the big agriculture universities and farms. And this webinar is organized in the framework of the eShape project, Horizon 2020. So we'd like to thank the project for giving us the opportunity to organize this kind of actions. So today we will look at 3 different areas. So we will look at the vineyards, orchards, and tea plantations, and we will look on the several use cases. As usual, we will show you what is possible, what is not possible. In compared to the previous webinars, when we were talking about the field crops and soil monitoring, those are the things that we're working on every day. Orchards and vineyards are more experimental, and it's more sharing of preliminary results that we have after discussing with the potential users. So if we look at the agriculture and satellite space data, what is actually the most important thing? Why to use the satellite data? Always the key thing is the scale. So the larger the farms are, the more added value they can get from satellite data. Also, another advantage is the global coverage. So it doesn't matter if you have one tea plantation in each country around 3 continents. You can all monitor them with the same data sets, with the comparable data with the same quantifiable information that you can use then for adjusting your management. And very important advantage of satellite data is always the affordability. The data is way cheaper than the comparable information that you can get from drones or on-site sensors. But this doesn't mean that the satellites can always substitute this. It's always one puzzle piece that needs to be combined with other data to really make the product which is suitable for the end user. In this webinar, it's always a vineyard or orchard company. And if we look directly on horticulture and viticulture, what are the main use cases? How space data and satellite data are used? The first one we've already mentioned in the previous series is the variable rate irrigation. So creating a specific irrigation based on the needs of the plants. Then it's a variable rate plant protection and fertilizing. This is not done so much based on satellite data only. It's more done in cooperation with the drones or with the sensors directly on the machinery. Another use case which is now gaining some traction is the pollination timing and blooming analysis. We will talk about it. Yield prediction is in our agriculture very important to understand how much, and in this area also what kind of quality the farmer can expect, and then it can change the way how to sell the production, how to plan for the harvest. Pre-spraying tissue sampling, it's a minor use case, where the satellite data are only helping to better define the places where the tissue sampling can take place, similar to the soil sampling, but we will not address it in this webinar. And the last one is the grape quality sorting, which is very interesting use case for those of you who like wine. Everybody likes a better wine, so this is actually increasing the quality and helping better to the companies to mix the grapes in order to prepare really good kivas that have higher price and higher quality. So this is the overall situation, and let's deep dive into the individual use cases now. But before we start, one more thing. Most of the use cases we covered previously were based on the open satellite data from the Copernicus program, mostly from Sentinel-2 and Sentinel-1 satellites. With the vineyards and orchards, the thing is that this satellites doesn't provide really the resolution which would be suitable for this kind of products. The resolution is too coarse, and it's too much mixing together the signal from the wine or the fruit trees together with the signal of the grass and the soil which is below it. So in order to reduce this noise, it needs to be done with using higher resolution data. And for this webinar, we will show you how the PlanetScope data how to use the PlanetScope data to work on this. So the methodology behind is similar, but if we use a different kind of data, which is a better resolution, in order to have a better result, which is usable for the end user, because most of the products that are based on Sentinel-2 in vineyards and orchards are actually not being used today because their quality is not enough. So the PlanetScope data is got around 3-meter spatial resolution. So for each 3 to 3 meters, you will get an information in compared to 10 meters in Sentinels. But also the Planet data are more regular. They are more often available. Here you can see that, for example, for this field with Sentinel-2, we've got 32 observation in April to October 2022. But the PlanetScope is 98, so it's 3 times more often. And especially for the high-value crops or higher value agriculture, including the wine and fruits, the time availability is even more important because the application's timing is even more crucial. So this is for the input. All the examples will be here using the Planet data, which are not for free, but they can be purchased. Again, we have some demonstration sites for you. For this webinar, we have 3 demonstration sites. We have a vineyard in Moravia. I've recently learned that some people don't know that in Czechia we have also vineyards because of the famous beer, but in South Moravia it's a wine area, so we have a first-hand experience with this. We have also fruit orchards that are near Brno, Czech Republic. They're here, and to have it more diverse, we have a tea plantation in Kerala, India. So let's look at what we have. We start with the vineyards, and our approach is always to try to get some theoretical background and then discuss it with the potential end users, and then try to combine these both positions, because the science says something, what is possible, but then users are usually having a different point of view. So combining these 2 points are actually leading us to identification of areas where the product could actually be. even if it's technically might be more challenging or the adoption might be a bit slower, it's still some better ground where we can build something together. So the key area that we identified for the vineyards is the variable rate irrigation and its timing. The key problem which we face today, of course, is the climate change and the water availability, which especially in Central and Central East, Central Southern Central Europe is becoming more and more crucial. So there's not enough water to cover all the irrigation that would be beneficial. So the farmers need to do some trade-offs and decide which part of the vineyards will get more water, which less, and where it will not be able to do it. But the irrigation is necessary, especially for certain part of the vegetation cycles of the wine, in order to get the higher quality, get the enough sugar content, and all the other quality parameters. The water needs to be supplied at certain growth stage of the wine. So that's why the irrigation is a big thing. And now I will show you how we can create a prescription map for irrigation, which is a similar process to the prescription maps for fertilizing, but it's even more complex because with the water, it's more complex situation. So the first step that we do is to define the irrigation management zones. It's similar to defining the yield potential in the field, but we're looking at the long-term soil moisture patterns. So we're looking at where the water is being accumulated in the soil in long term in the pre-vegetation period. And this is important that it's period before there is vegetation and after there is vegetation. So the signal is not disturbed by the plants themselves. So this gives us a background information. It very much correlates with the digital elevation model. So with the heights and lows in the area, but it's not only this. And based on this, we are able to create this into the management zones, which you can see on the right, which gives us the basic division of the vineyard into the individual zones. But this is still the long-term moisture zones, and this needs to be adjusted with the current situation, because each season is different, and with climate change, the differences are even growing. The velocity and magnitude of the change is growing, so the adjustment for the actual state needs to be always done. We use the combination of radar and optical data, as we discussed in the previous webinar on soil monitoring and soil moisture monitoring. And this combination gives us the information about the current availability of water in soil or in the plants, in the canopy. And this helps us to create the management zones that are using both this information combined. So we call it adjusted moisture management zones. And this, again, it's only an input into the other step where the complexity is even growing. So to create this kind of zoning is not that difficult. What is really difficult is to create the prescription maps for irrigation that tells the farmer, and today it's not to farmer, but to the irrigation devices and to the irrigation control systems, how much water needs to be spread on the different places. And for vineyards, it's not only about the maps of management zones. There needs to be other inputs like the soil type. Very crucial is, of course, the plant variety and the plant age, because the wine's root system is developing quite well in the years. So the older the plant is, The less important is the irrigation management zone. But the younger the plant is, the more important the management zone needs to be. And this, of course, needs to be combined with the weather forecast and the phenological stage of the vine. So in which crop growth stage the plant is, because each stage needs a different water amount. So it's basically a very complex thing that needs to be taken into the consideration. And then also evapotranspiration and infiltration models need to be run. Those are not only based on satellite data, but also on other parameters that are defining how much water is being used by the plant and are being dried out by the sun or put it out in the evapotranspiration, and also how much water is infiltrating into the soil. So all of these things together are used to create these prescription maps. And then the prescription maps need to be adjusted also to the kind of irrigation which the farmer is using. So it can be different systems that you can move or different drip irrigation. This is very different, and there is no standardization at the moment. So this needs to be done really tailored for each place. And that's why all these systems are very expensive. And you don't really find this being used all together at one place in a standard way. It's still some kind of experimental phases, but there are companies that are developing both the solutions, so hardware and software together, and they're already on the market. So it's not just science, but it's still a high portion of magic is involved in this process. But the results are very promising. So the main advantage of this variable water irrigation is the better distribution of the water resources, especially in the places where there is not enough water to cover all the need. The water consumption then can decrease by 15 to 30%. And in places where fossil fuels like oil are used for powering the tanks and the pumping systems, it's also decreasing the costs of fuel by 5 to 15%, which is already quite big cost for the farmer. Also, during the drought, it helps to regulate the impact of drought on the vineyards and prevents the problems with the irrigation infrastructure. So while monitoring also the places after the water application, you are able to see if there are some problems with the irrigation system and to find it sooner than if there was no monitoring. So this is the reason why the variable irrigation is now gaining quite a large focus, and especially this year when we have the outlook for the summer to have again the record summer and record droughts and higher temperatures. The farmers are seeking possibilities how to invest into the irrigation infrastructure and management. But monitoring the irrigation is not the only thing. The other parts are also regarding the quality of wine, because the harvesting of grapes, the way how we harvest is also affecting the quality of the product in the end, and adjusting the harvesting technology to the different zones, the quality zones in the vineyard, can help to improve the overall process. So this can be also done with the multispectral data, and in the future when we will have also the hyperspectral missions, this might be one of the use cases that will grow even further. So this is how it works overall. The basic correlation, I say basic because it's of course very complex situation, but the basic hypothesis is that With the wine, if you have less biomass, less leaves, it's usually the older plants and they are giving less fruit, but more sweet with more fruitness. If you have more biomass, it's usually the younger plants that have more fruit, which is more acid and more bitter. So putting this together and adjusting for the age zones in the vineyard, you are able to create a wine quality potential zones, and then the harvesting machines like this one can harvest together the grapes from the same quality potential zone, which then gives during the fermentation process the similar quality at the product, which can be then mixed together to create some of these cuvées that have a higher quality, a higher price for the customer. So this is something which is already implemented into some of the vineyards and in the industry. And I mean, really in this industrial level of vineyards. It's not this small scale that we have on the field that we are demonstrating. So those were vineyards, and we can move to the orchards now. Again, we have some picture from the testing with the, not testing, but the visits with the end users that we did last year and also this year. And let's look at what is the key thing in orchards. It's the pollination timing. It's the use case that we're working on multiple times this year and last year. And the main question is how to optimize the location and arrangements of beehives. This is especially in US when you have the companies that manage the beehives, they bring it to the orchard to increase the pollination effect. So for this, it's really necessary to understand when the pollination should happen. And it's mostly used for nut plantations like almond or pistachios. And this gives a potential for high improvement. Also using the bloom detection. So one possibility is to work on the phenology detection using the growing degree days and some climate data, but also from satellite data, from the real measurements, there is a possibility to detect the blooming. This is the example on the orchard that we're working with, and it shows you when it's start to bloom and how much, which is also connected to the yield predictions. So for the fruit trees, the bloom detection and the amount of the blooms, like a relative blooming concentration, can be very well used for the yield potential assessment and yield predictions. So this is something that the orchards can also use. And the last inspiration we have from the tea plantations, this one in Kerala, India. And for the tea, the important thing is to organize the harvest and to predict the yields. So for the teas that are harvested in the method that you collect the top level of the leaves, like for example for mate, or for the tea which is then fermented and the black tea is created, like Earl Grey, the satellite data can be used in order to find out the potential for selective harvest based on the growth speed, growth magnitude. So this data is processed in a way that you analyze the places where the growth is the fastest, and those are the places that should be harvested first. Also, this leaf density can be paired with the yield. I'm saying paired because there is correlation, but it's not very strong correlation. this needs to be always tuned with the specific plant type and also the geography, which is, those are not the things that we've already done in ourselves. This is the output of a scientific research that we assessed and analyzed. But there is this correlation. So in the future, this could be also used for the tea plantation managements. And similarly to other plantations. So there are also products for the coffee plantations or for example, banana plantations. But always the parameters that needs to come into the assessment are a bit different based on each fruit. And our idea, why we are working on this, is to create an infrastructure which enables you to work on these use cases with us or by yourself. So that's why we created the DynaCrop, which is a white label ecosystem that you can easily connect to your digital tool. And it doesn't matter if you're working with vineyards or orchards or crop monitoring or soil monitoring. You can easily use our platform to create with us the products and then sell it to your customers. So this is why we are here. The system works globally. It's available through API, and we can always help you with setting up these use cases, finding the very specific details for your situation, and then setting up the processing so you can then easily sell it to the end user. We're focusing on the prescription maps mostly at the moment for fertilizing, seeding, and plant protection, but also on optimization of soil sampling and the timing of the application. So when is the right time to do the things? But we are very happy always to work on some new areas like the irrigation or the orchards, quality of wine monitoring, and the others. So this is the end of the first part, when there was the presentation. We can now move to the questions and answers. If you have any, please feel free to type it into the Q&A session. And we have already first question here. How do you eliminate data disruption in interrow spaces in vineyards, especially for quality zoning? It's not that simple, especially when interrow vegetation is strong and green. Data is mixed with vineyard vegetation. It can lead to reverse results for grape quality. Of course, yes, this is a big problem for both vineyards and orchards. There are basically three approaches that we can do. The first one is getting a better resolution, which means not using the Sentinel data, but using Planet or even better data. Then, of course, it's always a possibility to mix it with drone data, where you can define the zones that you really need to take into the computation and the zones that you want to cut out. That's one possibility. The other possibility is to eliminate the mixed pixels, similarly to how it's done in the urban environment. Or the last possibility is to try to do some methods how to unmix it and how to decrease the level of noise in the monitoring. But this needs to be done always with the knowledge of the soil and the different plants that are growing under the vineyards. This is not easy task, and there are some scientific papers how to do it, but I would say the overall results are still not great. They are good, they show the way, but I agree with you that this is one of the key problems we need to tackle before we will have really the products that will be used on a mass scale. Yes, we have another one. What type of technology do you use to analyze irrigation needs and wine quality? Only RGB images or also multispectral, hyperspectral? Very good question. So at the moment, we're working mostly with the multispectral data. The plant scope data are now their bands are done in a way that they're kind of compatible with the Sentinel data, so they can be used also together. But the multispectral is very important, and with the future hyperspectral space missions, like we have now only 2, which are more research-based, and they don't have enough resolution, so they can really bring the information that we need. But in 3 to 5 years, the very high resolution hyperspectral missions can really bring the huge progress into the wine, especially quality monitoring, because it will provide much more information, which is relevant to the processes that are happening in the plant itself and in the different phases. So at the moment, it's focused. We are based on multispectral, but the transfer to hyperspectral will happen definitely. And I will also open another poll now about the major barriers in orchards and vineyards, because the reason why it's not so much spread as with the open fields and the soil monitoring is, of course, that there are problems like the mixed pixels or other technical, for example, the limitations of the multispectral imagery. But this will improve in time. But there are also some limitations on the end user side, like for example, the orchards and vineyards are very often run by small-scale farmers, not really on the industrial level that would be able to adopt this kind of technology very fast. And the margin of the benefit in these areas is not that high as in open crops, so it really needs larger areas in order to produce a relevant change for the economy of orchard or a vineyard or tea plantation. But I will look at the question. What parameters are important to study for coffee plantations? Okay, I will. I'm not able to answer you this at this moment, as I'm not really expert on coffee plantations. I know that there is quite a lot of research that was done, also applied with the companies that are actually buying the coffee from the plantations to analyze the quality of the coffee beforehand, so they understand how much and what kind of quality they can expect from their suppliers. But if you would like to know more, I would recommend you to book a meeting with us, and we can discuss this also with our agriculture expert. Good. So I think I can end the poll now and show you the results. The low spatial resolution of satellites is the biggest problem you see, but also a lot of the small scale growers. Those are the main 2 problems that you see. So I think that here we understand the situation similarly. Right. So thank you for taking part in our webinar series. It's available also online on YouTube, so feel free to watch this or the other parts that you haven't seen. Or at any time, we welcome you to book a meeting with us and discuss your ideas or use cases or experience directly with us, so we can look at it and see if there is some potential for collaboration or not. Thank you for being with us, and we're looking forward to meeting you again live in some events or online during the meetings. Thank you and bye-bye.